for you this morning, I think, yeah? So can we all sort of wave to make sure nobody's asleep? Great. I'm Glenn Stewart, I'm sure you can read, and what I want to speak about this morning is something that's been happening to us for the last 2 years, and it's building centres of excellence in companies. I've said through collaborative learning, and that's true. We use collaborative learning, we use different methods, we use social networking contexts in there. So I'm going to flit around a little, and hopefully you'll get a flavour of what we've been doing in the last couple of years and the sorts of problems that we've been helping companies and industry in general to solve, or at least to begin to solve. Yeah. Okay. So put your fast ears on, right? So what's happened this last? Whoops, the arrows. What's happened this last year? What I want to do here is just talk a little bit about what we've been involved in the previous year, and then move swiftly on to this last year and what the changes have been for us in collaborative learning and in e-learning in general. I'm sure you're all familiar with this sort of concept where people started off individually learning things, moving into groups, but still no repository, no interaction, no real building of something more than just what the individuals are doing. And then, the fundamental ideas of moving over into groups of individuals learning. And I guess for us it started maybe 6 or 7 years ago when we first became, in a content management sense, involved with companies who were beginning to do this, who were beginning to put groups of learners together and to try to build up some sort of uniform way of doing things and uniform repository. And then I guess with the advent of things like social networking, cloud computing, of server technology, at the very least, we got the chance in a company context to create centres, to create repositories of learning, where what came out of the whole was more than the sum of the parts, if you see what I mean. And companies really, really like doing this, because actually what it does is it protects their investment. Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line with it, right? Because if we can all learn in a situation working for a company and contribute, even in a collaborative way, even in an individual way, but certainly in a collaborative way, to a communal set of repositories, that knowledge remains there, even when Glenn goes and joins another company. Make sense? Okie dokie. In general, the e-learning market's moved from publishing. It's a little bit like the CMS market, isn't it? If you think about it, it's moved from publishing. How many people have ever been on a course? Hands up. Yeah. Right. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Right. Hands down if it was a non-interactive course. Hands down if it was a course where people just did something to you and that was it. 3 hands up, 5 hands up. Yeah, okay, so those are the normal sorts of courses, aren't they? Where you just get something done to you and that's it, no interaction. And here, the technologies that we're talking about are moving from publishing to participation in a real sense. And I'll come on to how we do things like that, but there's a little list of things, a sort of tantalising list there in a way. Things like cloud, like social bookmarking, social media, direct links in the middle of a lesson, and you've got a page there, and you want to move to a wiki article or something like that, and you want to actually include that as reference material, then all of that's possible because we've got that technology. But for the most part, it's something that's just not done, is it? We don't see it on the courses that we go on. Yep. There we go, get rid of that. Okay, so what's happening? from our point of view, and shout out if you see some other things, there's still very slow adoption of this myth, this strange thing called e-learning too, which is not really materialized. Interactions happening. We're seeing interaction happening more and more in the content that's being created for courses. Yeah. And to save I'm just looking at the lady in the front row here, frantically scribbling notes. All of this presentation, give me your emails afterwards and I'll send you the presentation out. Okay, no problem. So this slow adoption of these interaction things, these technologies, what we are seeing, and what we saw last year, towards the end of last year, we were being asked more and more to incorporate our LMS into another website, into another internal application for an intranet, to glue it into something else. There's more of a focus on standards nowadays. Maybe 2 years ago, when we went out to sell LMSs and we said SCORM, the standard answer is, what? Yeah, AICC, what? Yeah, but now people are understanding the need for standards. We went out, a typical example that we found this year, beginning of this year, a couple of weeks ago, was over in Oslo with a company there, and we actually market and sell LMSs, and we were implementing an LMS, and I was giving a training day. And I said at the end of the training day, one of the standard things, have you thought about your learning, your content? Have you thought about what you're going to do? And they said, oh, yes, we've done that. I said, okay. When are you bringing things on stream, expecting that it would be a long time? They said, well, we've got 1,500 courses that are ready to go, and we'll start them on Monday of next week. And I thought, wow, terrific. Where did you must have a lot of instructional designers, right? Where did you get them from? How big's your department? They said, no, we don't have a department. We downloaded the courses from Microsoft this afternoon. Yeah? 1,500. Now, it was internal. They were delivering things to guys on boats in the middle of the ocean. They got a real problem. Yeah? But that way of doing things for them, that way of encapsulating it within something else, within their extranet, yeah? In their case, is still a big thing, and something that they were beginning to do straight away. But the standards thing, because the Microsoft courses are standards compliant, it's gone 2004, they were just easily able to import them. So moving on, what are we doing? What are we doing in the social networking arena now? Hands up everybody who's got a Facebook account. Okay, hands down. Hands up everybody who hasn't got a Facebook account. Minority. It's just the way it goes. Even I've got a Facebook account, right? But it's just the way it goes. That now you can use it or not use it, and you can use it in e-learning or not use it. You can use wikis in e-learning or not use it. As instructional designers or whatever we do, the choice is ours there. But if we want to actually use these things that are a lot of the time are product-wise are free, okay, we've got to put a little bit of effort into instructional design in including them in the context. They're there to use. There's nothing to stop us. Social networking, 80% of learning is informal, so we send people on courses. How about this one? A novice receives formal learning. Every new starter, you've got to go on the course, okay? The directors, the managers, it's not formal learning anymore. They receive informal learning. It's a curious way around that, isn't it? Okay, and then looking through in social networking terms, what's the value? What's the value of being able to include in your e-learning course, in a particular course, a link or a link to a discussion forum or a blog or something of that nature right there and then? Now, some organisations might say, risky, because they'll just, the learners will just use it to moan. to put negative comments out there. Well, okay, that's fair, and I understand that. But you can get some positive ones as well, and you can actually get people interacting over blogs and over discussion forums and coming out with far more than they could have done individually. Make sense? Yeah? And all of this might be inward facing. It might be on an intranet that you're using your e-learning system. Yeah? So discussions and collaborations, promoting feedback and change, and that bottom line thing as well, which is why it makes sense for organisations in that it's building not only, it's building on the one hand, it's building social capital, and a bond between people who are on those courses, but on the other hand, it's actually lowering the risk for employers because it's building up those repositories and those permanent situations that can be used by Glenn, who's just started in a company, on day one. Okay, so journals, blogs and other tools. All of these social networking things we can use, and we can use positively in our learning management system. So why? Why? Well, to capture the knowledge, solve problems, share thinking. There's a huge amount of things there that come out of it that I've just summarised, and it makes sense both for companies and for individuals to get more out of the equation than they would otherwise. So blended learning, how do we incorporate that? How do we use that in an e-learning system nowadays? Again, we go back to the old way, the sort of tried and tested way in some senses. Blended and online learning together is way more effective than just e-learning by itself or just face-to-face. So how can we do that? How can we get that personal involvement? Well, the first way that we can get personal involvement is by using some of those social networking tools. Things like blogs, discussion forums, they can be used as mentoring situations within an organisation. So you can get a relationship building up of similar interests, and you can get people being nominated as experts in particular areas and utilising those blogs, those wikis, those forums, whatever, while they're actually doing courses, while they're actually in that learning scenario. And that builds up in the company the repository, the storehouse of knowledge, and it more than that, it builds up a feeling of excellence, of wanting to progress together. So what can we blend in there? We can blend activities, courses and programs. We can do them between different organisations. In an IFA network that we were working with recently, the individual companies within that network were collaboratively working together in a learning situation in order to promote best practice in particular areas that had just come on stream in the financial services arena, so they can be used positively. And there's some potential issues there as well, and it's more about culture within an organisation and moving on within that organisation than anything else. So, what types of blended learning can we use? Again, all within that same learning management system. We can use face-to-face, I guess, but with things like Skype, messaging tools and so forth, with things like discussion forums, we can use asynchronous tools to develop, and that doesn't always mean there's got to be someone there on the other end at that point in time. So we can use that as a means of building up that learning. And I don't know what you've found at all, but we found very, very slowly across corporate that mobile is coming in. It's hardly there. It's not 1% yet. It's really at the infancy. But it is being thought about, and it's been talked about, it's been budgeted for more and more in the organisations that we deal with. So we as an organisation have to realise that what we produce has got to be capable of being received in a mobile format. Towards the end of last year, I was over in Stockholm and showing a client for a partner there our learning management system, and they wanted it for the organisation that controls the driving licence, the verification of driving schools within Sweden. And I got to the end of the presentation and the guy said to me, well, where's the mobile version? Because when the kids are on the bus coming home from school, that's when they want to learn. Yeah? So we're duty bound almost to provide that sort of beginning in the e-learning environment, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen with us or without us. And in some areas it'll happen very, very slowly. But in others, I do notice, especially when you're dealing with general public, that in terms of technology, it happens quicker and quicker, and we have to make provision, even if it's only a beginning. How do you eat an elephant? Bit by bit. Yeah? It's the only way of doing it. Collaborative learning, and we've been talking about this all the way through so far, this little chat. I think it's Wikipedia, it defines it as a situation in which two or more people learn or attempt to learn something together, and the potential there is that you can get more out of it because of that interaction. But most organisations wouldn't go into this area in any great extent, is our experience. Okay, they may organise you for little teams to do activities and things of that nature, but they won't actually get into the collaborative learning situation of an e-learning system. So there's still a separation, isn't there? There's still a way to go before all of those ideas are being used by people on an ongoing basis. But the bottom line of all of that is that it does produce that team spirit, that positive interdependency, and that can be produced. Okay, maybe it's in a different way, but it can be produced through an e-learning environment also. So what we're finding is that there's a move towards social media in companies within their e-learning environment, and you'll have noticed it within their websites also. I think pretty much it's the beginning of the end of sort of flat websites and flat e-learning as such. I mean, it's going to take a while to die. It's not going to happen overnight. But there's a change happening out there. The inclusion of video, the inclusion of interactive things in a web sense, in a learning sense, because that tool is there and you're able to use that. Inclusion of standard things like Windows Live Essentials, Microsoft tools, Google tools, things of that nature. Why shouldn't? Picture your children. To put this into context, when I went to school, I got a piece of work to do as a homework, and I sat down and maybe I got a few reference books upstairs, and that was pretty much an encyclopedia my auntie had bought me, and that was pretty much how you did your homework, right? Admittedly, I'm going back quite a few years now, right? You won't understand any of this. But nowadays it's entirely different, and it's entirely different because of this. Because you've got access to the internet, because you can wiki it, you can Google it, you can get your information on a particular thing that you've got to do a dissertation on. Okay, so we accept that, don't we? We accept that in that sort of learning environment. But in a company learning environment, oh no. Everything's locked down. You can't go Googling things, right? Maybe I'm touching a few sore spots here, intentionally, right? But we sort of do it two different ways, don't we? We do it one for business and one for our kids, and there's no reason particularly. It's acceptance, isn't it, in those fields of doing things in particular ways. I guess what I'm trying to encourage you here is, I'm being subversive, aren't I? I'm encouraging you to go out and do these things and increase that sort of quality of e-learning and interaction in that way. Because ultimately, it's what's going to happen and it's what's going to work. So how does all this glue together into what I started off talking about, the low risk thing for companies? In a positive sense, so many times now, we've gone into companies, into medium to large size companies, and we've helped them begin in e-learning, and then we've helped them to move on and sort of acted as pointers along the way and said, what about this? What about that? Have you considered doing this? And what we're really trying to do is just change people's way of thinking a little bit. Maybe this is a better description rather than going like that, because we're trying to widen and broaden what they're doing to include social interaction tools, because those tools will help build and will build that centre of excellence, the formal learning environment within a company where people are contributing collectively, individually, but as groups as well, into repositories which are held within the company. You picture Glenn starts in Company X, cement mixing company, whatever, on day one. And I don't know who's in charge in the sales department, maybe, and I don't know who's in charge of the northern area or the quick setting cement or whatever it is, but through the learning management system and through that network, that inward-facing network, which is at Company X's intranet, that I'm able straight away to find out who's the expert in particular areas, to schedule a quick get-together with them for them to teach me. I've just started, I've been given a task to do this, my boss is Fred, and can you point me in the right direction? And all of a sudden there's a vehicle there for building up that internal capital, that internal social capital, but that internal company capital of knowledge as well. You've got those tools, so you're able to do that sort of thing. It's not to say it's dead easy, and it's not to say that you won't get some counter arguments, okay, from companies saying, we pay you to mix concrete, not to go Googling, right? We understand that, but any movement like that will come through gradual influence over time and acceptance of these self-same social networking collaborative structures that we actually use and our children use in their learning situations. It's just that they're not implemented in a company organisation, in a company setting. So we end up with knowledge bases, a learning environment. It's not utopia, stuff goes wrong, but we end up with something that's a centre of excellence, quite simply, that's an improvement. But by virtue of us doing that, we've encouraged that progress, we've encouraged that feeling that it's good to do better. And it's been accepted by companies, it's been accepted by individuals, and it's really starting it off through using these day-to-day acceptable tools that we all use outside of a company environment. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. And we've talked about what constitutes the centre of excellence. That's pretty much me done. Questions? Questions? Has anybody any questions? Sure.
What about the downside of collaborative learning? People may misdirect each other and end up learning the wrong things, for example.
Great. The gentleman there just said, what about the downside of collaborative learning? People might misdirect each other, get the wrong end of the stick looking at a particular problem or whatever. I guess we've got a couple of things that we can do in that context. We can provide and incorporate collaborative learning into best practice guidelines, and we can set those up. And because of the social networking facilities and more importantly the repositories of knowledge, we can build those up over time to help ensure that the learning doesn't go off track. Yeah, that's one thing. In terms of what we're doing, we're not saying it's all or nothing. We're still beginning lessons, we're covering topics, we're getting some feedback, some assessment in there. So we have that feedback on, are we still on track? So we're reducing and managing, if you like, we're managing the risk on that point of view. And I guess the third way that we can do it is by actually using these tools that we're talking about. We can, because it will inevitably not just be two individuals, but it'll be a wider group. Then the wider group will have more spread. There'll be a bell curve of ideas with regard to any problem at that point. So that helps self-regulate in a way as well. So there's certainly those three ways, but a good question, sir, yeah? Any more for any more? Okie dokie. That's me done. If anybody wants to speak to me afterwards, I'll be here. Please leave your email address and I'll send you the PowerPoint of the presentation today. And we're just across the way at the stand, Ultimedia over there. Thank you very much.